when I give this back to you and Aseto, I'd like you to ask the experts if creating informal jobs helps the government collect more taxes. But let's just look at the allocations right now. And in the macroeconomics comparison, compared to last year and this year, remember, this here is a proposed number. The 4.82 is a proposed number. Last year it was 4.2. It ended up being 4.6. Now it's 4.8. I don't know if Exen can explain to us how far up that number can go eventually. But that's just what it looks like, and we have talked about this. It has grown by 2.7%, especially right now leading to the election. There's a lot of fiscal discipline. You'd see that the stance of this particular budget, as I explained, different sectors, it's looking to fund different projects that will help into the election. For example, the IEBC gets a huge chunk and stuff like those. Of course, security apparatus gets a lot because they say they're improving intelligence and modernizing the equipment and everything, but think about it, they need to fund also the police. But that's the stance of this budget, leading towards the economic election period. Now, to start us off, of course, we have that's just the bigger number that we've talked about, but I'd like to go straight to election, who are always the biggest winners, and it shows it's still a priority for the government, and it's sort of, I don't know why it's always getting a lot more money, but it's usually, if you don't educate your people, there's nowhere you're going. So it's getting around 781 billion Kenyan shillings. But for governance and everything is 353 billion. That's what we have right there. But that again is because of the IEBC. IEBC gets around 27 billion Kenyan shillings because of election preparedness and stuff like those. So that falls under governance and the 2027 election. Now moving on, and again, that chunk of money right there is because we are leading into the election period. Now education gets the biggest chunk, 781 billion Kenyan shillings, up by 25 billion. Of course, that is a priority by the government, and year on year, it has always gotten a lot more than most. And I'll tell you who is the biggest loser. This is the biggest winner. I'll tell you who is the biggest loser, and is interesting. Is, of course, I'll preempt, is the energy sector, but moving forward is the energy sector, and is interesting, is tied to the National Infrastructure Fund. We can move to the next slide. On energy, who is the biggest loser again, as I've mentioned, energy gets 535 billion, which is down by nearly 70 billion Kenyan shillings. And this is because the government thinks, because of the National Infrastructure Fund and, that stance that this Kenya Kwanza government has put in terms of privatizing and getting money from, privatizing and getting the IPO from KPC, that type of fund is what will be funding stuff like getting the last mile, getting poles of electricity and stuff like those. So they will use that to get the money that is going to be a deficit here from the previous budget. And also remember, the corporations that work in the energy sector make a lot of money still. They are profitable, or they are good, like KenGen, Kentraco, and Kenya Power, so they can stand for themselves. That is one, and that's why this is down by 7.2 billion Kenyan shillings, the shift towards using the National Infrastructure Fund. The next slide, I think, that's on governance. The next slide on governance, of course, that is where is still on election, but is up by 26 billion. And I think that 26 billion is exactly what the IEBC gets, which is around 27 billion. So yeah, that's what goes to governance. But of course, it's a change from financial year 25, 26, 326 to right now 353 billion Kenyan shillings. That's a huge increase, considering we need fiscal discipline owing to the debt that we have. Now, this other one also is tied to the election, the next slide, which is on security, the national security. So on national security, remember, we are heading to the election. Police are used properly by government to run the election. That is one. And two, the reasoning. Now I'll give you the actual reasoning on this appropriation bill. They say the national security is up by 20 billion to modernize the security apparatus and also improve on the intelligence that we have. Modernize and improve intelligence because of the regional tensions in terms of wars that is going on and everything. We have to be prepared, but I can't help but notice that also it's an election period, and perhaps we use this national security more locally than against our against the borders. But still, we need modernization and improve, and we need to also improve our intelligence. So for the national security, they have proposed 308 billion Kenyan shillings, 0.6 billion because that 0.6 is so big, and it's up by 20.7 billion. That's for national security, up 20.7 billion. So these are one of the biggest winners actually, apart from education, is security apparatus and everything. So health services, of course, the government has an agenda there. Leading to the election, they have the national health services to look at, universal health services, I beg your pardon. It's allocated 175.5 billion Kenyan shillings. This is, of course, important for both our health, improving the universal health coverage, and, of course, good for the campaign and on top of cars, speeches. And then next, I think this is automated. We'd want to, the primary health care also, SHIF is another on top of the car announcements. It goes up 10.6 billion. From 164.9 billion, it goes up to 175.5 billion. So that's just how the budget looks up to health. I'll continue on these slides. I have everything prepared for you, but the stance on this particular budget, Ndu and Aseto, and our distinguished guests, it looks like the government is observing fiscal discipline, at the same time looking like it's getting ready for the election and putting out a good number just so it doesn't trigger tension among